The valley floor vibrated with the rhythmic clang of steel hitting steel. Adam stood at the center of the forge, his back muscles bunching and releasing with every strike of the hammer. He pulled a rod of iron from the furnace, the metal glowing a blinding, molten white. He moved with the economy of a man who had spent decades mastering the weight of the tool. He laid the iron across the anvil. He struck. The spark shower illuminated the dark corners of the shop. He struck again, shifting the angle by a fraction of a millimeter, forcing the stubborn metal to yield to his intent. The air in the workshop was thick with the scent of coal smoke and scorched earth. Adam did not pause. He rotated the rod, checked the symmetry, and hammered once more, the sound echoing off the distant valley walls. He was not just shaping metal, he was imposing his will upon it. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, and heavy with power. He plunged the glowing piece into a barrel of water, the resulting hiss of steam drowning out the birdsong outside. He pulled it back out, the iron now a perfect, functional curve. He set the hammer down, yet the village knew the shadow behind his skill. It was not the heat of the furnace that kept the neighbors at a distance, but the volatility of the man who tended it. A single mistake could trigger a storm. Months ago, a neighbor had stumbled into the workshop, his shoulder brushing against a workbench. The sound of the collision was minor, but the reaction was absolute. Adam had spun around, his face flushing a deep, dangerous crimson. He did not shout. He simply grabbed the nearest wooden stool and drove it into the stone floor with such force that the wood exploded into jagged, useless splinters. The neighbor had backed out, eyes wide, leaving the shop in total silence. Adam had stood there, chest heaving, his knuckles white, as he gripped the handle of his hammer. The air had felt thin, charged with a static pressure that made it hard to breathe. Everyone in the village knew that look. His forge was the heart of the village, but his temper remained its greatest, most unpredictable threat. When the hammer fell, it was precision. When the rage took hold, it was destruction. The rhythm of the shop held steady until Tuesday afternoon. The air grew heavy, thick with a sudden, unnatural stillness that seemed to push against the heat of the forge. A man stepped through the doorway, his presence jarring against the soot-stained walls. He walked with a deliberate, arrogant gait, his eyes scanning the workbench with open, practiced disgust. He stopped before a finished horseshoe resting near the edge of the wood. With a sharp flick of his boot, he sent the iron flying across the dirt floor. It struck the stone wall with a harsh, ringing clatter that cut through the ambient noise of the fire. The stranger sneered, his gaze locking onto Adam. "This is garbage," he declared, his voice cutting through the shop like a blade. A child could forge better than this. The rhythmic hammering of the apprentices stopped instantly. The sound of the bellows died away. The fire crackled, but it was the only sound left in the room. The silence was absolute, heavy, and suffocating. The stranger stood waiting, his chin tilted upward, daring the shop to react. Adam did not move, but his grip on the hammer handle tightened until the leather groaned. His pulse throbbed in his temples, a rhythmic, frantic beat that drowned out the crackle of the coals. The heat from the forge, usually a familiar comfort, suddenly felt like a furnace igniting inside his chest, radiating outward through his limbs. His jaw locked. A sharp, metallic tang filled his mouth as he ground his teeth together. He took a single, heavy step forward, his boot crushing a stray coal into the dirt with a sharp crunch. The urge to swing the hammer, to silence the man with raw force, surged through his veins like lightning. He looked at the stranger's sneering mouth, then at the heavy iron tool in his hand. His knuckles turned white, the skin stretched tight over bone. The pressure in his head mounted, a physical weight that made his vision narrow. Every muscle in his shoulders coiled, ready to snap. He raised the hammer, the weight of it feeling like an extension of his own burning rage, and the shop held its breath, waiting for the impact. The hammer hung in the air, the iron head dark against the orange glow of the furnace. Then, the warning surfaced. It was not a thought, but a memory of his old mentor's voice, sharp and clear as a struck bell. Adam froze. The momentum of his swing died in his shoulder. He did not drop the weapon, but he did not advance. He planted his feet firmly on the dirt floor, digging his heels into the earth to anchor himself against the fire in his blood. He closed his eyes. The stranger's sneer vanished from his vision, replaced by the darkness behind his lids. He began to count. 1, 2, 3. He forced his lungs to expand, drawing in the dry, dusty air of the workshop. He listened past the crackle of the forge, straining to hear the faint, rhythmic trickle of the stream outside the valley walls. The sound was thin, cold, and steady. He exhaled, a long, slow release that shuddered through his chest. He opened his eyes. The world was no longer a target. It was simply the room. Adam looked at the hammer, then at the workbench. He did not slam the tool down. Instead, he lowered it with deliberate, controlled precision until the iron head met the wood with a soft, final thud. The sound was small, yet in the silence of the shop, it carried the weight of a gavel. He turned his gaze toward the stranger. The man stood with his chin thrust forward, his hands balled into fists, bracing for a blow that never came. Adam walked past him, his movements fluid and unhurried. He reached down to the dirt floor and retrieved the discarded horseshoe. He held it up to the light, turning the metal over in his calloused fingers to inspect the curve in the weld. He did not look at the stranger's face, but he felt the man's posture falter. The stranger's shoulders dropped, his mouth hanging slightly open. Adam walked to the furnace and gestured toward the glowing coals. "I see the error," Adam said. "I will fix it now. Stay and watch." Adam turned to the furnace, his tongs gripping the iron rod with practiced ease. He thrust the metal into the heart of the coals, the orange glow reflecting in his eyes. He did not look at the man behind him. He waited for the precise shade of cherry red, his breathing synchronized with the steady pulse of the bellows. He pulled the iron out, the heat radiating in waves, and moved to the anvil. The first strike was a soft tap to set the angle. The second was a heavy, ringing blow that sent sparks showering across the floor. He worked with a rhythmic, hypnotic cadence. Every swing of the hammer was calculated, correcting the curve, smoothing the surface, and tightening the structure of the metal. The stranger stood rooted to the spot, his previous arrogance replaced by a fixed, unblinking stare. The shop was filled only with the sound of metal meeting metal. Adam folded the metal, hammered it flat, and shaped the heel with a final, decisive strike. He quenched the horseshoe in the water barrel, the steam rising in a thick, white plume. He pulled the piece out, wiped the soot away, and held it up. He walked over and pressed the cool, finished iron into the stranger's hand. The man turned and walked out. Adam stood alone in the quiet shop. He did not celebrate the victory. He simply picked up his hammer and turned back to the anvil. The metal waited. He had not just shaped iron that day. He had shaped his own character. True power is found in the pause, that brief, silent moment where you choose your response instead of letting your rage choose for you. He struck the iron, steady and rhythmic. Master the moment, and you master the path. The clang of the hammer echoed as the sound of a man in command.